You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
The time has come for America to hear the truth.
We are going to stand with them, and not only are we going to fight for their rights, but we're going to stand up for our rights here in our state, in our homes, and in our community.
One day longer, one day stronger. One day longer, one day stronger.
Because the future of labor's rights in the United States of America is not going to be decided in the courts. It's not going to be decided in Congress. It's not going to be decided on talk radio, and it sure is not going to be decided on Fox News.
Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong.
Good morning, Tennessee Valley. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator, David Story. It is Saturday, October 10th, 2020, and we're broadcasting live online and on the radio on WVNN in the Huntsville, Decatur, Athens listening area from Athens, Alabama. A recording of this program will play tomorrow, Sunday, October 11th, 2020, on the great WGOL in Russelville, Alabama. Today we're talking to Daniel Harris, the opinions editor of the University of Chicago Student Political Review. The destruction of labor unions has led to the lowering of wages and benefits and has created a gender pay gap between men and women teachers where none existed before in the state of Wisconsin. We will take your calls and more on today's Valley Labor Report. Thanks for tuning in, folks. We appreciate your time today. If you want to see what we're up to throughout the week and get our snide quips about the news of the day, then you should follow us on social media. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/Valley Labor Report. We're on Twitter at Labor Reporters. I'm on Twitter at Jacob_M_AL. David is on Twitter at Radical Unionist. That is spelled RADICL Unionist. And if you missed part of the show and want to watch it later, you can go to our YouTube channel at the Valley Labor Report and subscribe. You can go there and watch the full show later, and we also clip segments and release it throughout the week. We also upload the program on more than 11 different podcasting apps, so you can see if we are on your listening platform of choice. Go to thevalleylaborreport.transistor.fm/subscribe. And finally, if you appreciate our work and want to help us stay on the air, then consider throwing us a couple dollars a month on patreon.com/thevalleylaborreport. So like I said, we are talking to Daniel Harris today. He is the opinions editor of UChicago Gate, which is the University of Chicago's political review. He is an undergraduate in history. So Daniel, thanks for taking the time with us. I appreciate it.
Jacob, David, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're really glad to have you on. So Daniel, you are... like I said, you're in college right now. You are getting your undergraduate in history, and you are interested in the labor movement. And like I was telling you this morning, David is an old man, and he likes to see young folks involved in the labor movement and interested in unions and what they can do for working folks. So what was kind of the genesis of your interest in the labor movement? What was it that turned you on to unions and that kind of advocacy?
Well, as we were talking about before the show, it definitely is something that we have a family tradition of. My grandparents have had a long history of political activism committed to the cause of working people. My dad has spent much of his life in the labor movement and crafting labor policy and standing up for working people across the country. But I think that just growing up and developing my political values, I realized that workplace democracy and worker power are vital parts of any just society. So if we want to achieve our goals, whether that's prosperity, liberty, democracy, all of this requires putting more power in the hands of working people so that they can dictate the terms of our society.
Absolutely. We totally agree with that. And that's I know that I'm younger as well, but it definitely heartens. I love to see folks that are closer to my age as well. A lot of times I'm at these union meetings and I'm the only person under like 40. So it's nice. It's nice seeing somebody my age interested in this kind of stuff. And so you came across our radar. You wrote an article for UChicago Gate titled "Right to Work Must Die." About right-to-work laws and the conservative agenda to destroy worker power across the country. And so just kind of lay the article out for us. Like what are you talking about there, and what's kind of your thesis in the article?
Yeah, so in the 1950s and 1960s, when the labor movement was really at its peak, the big business interests in this country and their conservative allies in all levels of government realize this is sort of a do or die moment for us. Either we allow workers to continue to build power, continue to organize industry and their workplaces, and we continue to lose our bottom line because working people will have better wages, better healthcare, better pensions. And so they decided this is when we crack down. And so they did their absolute best, and they did an excellent job. It pains me to say, but they did a great job cracking down on organized labor. And, it was in tandem with trade deals that took a lot of these jobs out of the United States, which decimated organized labor. But really, right-to-work laws are the front line of the legal battle against labor unions. And what a right-to-work law is, for anyone out there who doesn't know, is it prohibits a contractual agreement between the union and the employer requiring that all members pay dues. So what that means is that a member can demand that the union represent it legally against the employer for some sort of lawsuit, whatever the case may be. And then the union is obligated to spend tens of thousands of dollars representing these workers, even though this worker may not pay dues, as opposed to a collective bargaining state where when your workplace is organized, everyone pays dues and you all share in the benefits because you all contribute to the union. And what this has done is reduce the amount of funding going towards labor unions, because you have a free riding problem where working people say, if I don't have to pay the dues, but I can still get better wages, better healthcare, a pension, I'm not going to pay the dues. And then the union in a right to work state has very little money. And what happens is union density goes down, fewer workplaces are organized, and the union has little to no ability to influence political events in that state or in that county. And as a result, wages go down, the workplace becomes much less safe. I think that the best statistics on this show that for every 1% that union density goes down in any given industry, workplace fatalities go up 5%. So, we see that unions are really, they're keeping workers safe, and right to work laws, by destroying the union, are destroying the lives of working people across this country.
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot on the show as far as the safety aspect coupled to the union density in each state and across the nation as well. It really, really speaks to what can happen whenever workers have control or have some say in their working conditions. And like Jacob said, I was real interested in bringing you on for the simple fact that whenever I came across your article, I guess a couple of months, maybe a month, 6 weeks ago, when I was doing some research on another issue, and generally I don't read right to work, articles framed around right to work that much because it depresses me. But yours caught me off guard because you were mentioning the Ludlow massacre and things of that nature that. Very, very, it's amazing how so few people know about the history of the labor movement. And so I automatically assume you were my age or older. And I was like, well, I'll finish this article. And then I clicked on your title, your name up there. And I was like, holy smoke, this guy's like younger than my son. So, but that kind of speaks to you with your history degree. So, why do you, in your opinion, Jacob is a little bit older than you, and I talk to him every once in a while about it, but in your opinion, why do you think, let me frame it this way, what are we doing wrong to not have more involvement with the younger generation, the millennials? Where are we going wrong? Because they're media driven. but apparently we're not doing something right to bring them in.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that question, and it's a tough one. And I'd say first and foremost is that it's certainly not it's not primarily the fault of labor organizers and unionists that my generation is not educated properly on the history of organized labor. It's the fact that people in power don't want my generation to be educated on organized labor. I talk to my friends about this all the time, where we'll have a 2-hour conversation about worker power, about union models, and then we say, can you imagine if we had been taught this in high school? And because of course we weren't. I think about the AP US history course that I took my sophomore year of high school, and I think that over those 40-something weeks of school, the words labor union came up maybe once, and it was when we were learning about the Haymarket riot, and the only thing we were taught was, labor unions were these scary, socialist, radical, violent. And so I think that the conversation has to start with, what are we being taught and why? And what we're taught is that sort of all the change that's happened in America has happened because, the people at the top are good people and they want everyone to succeed. And the reality is, I talk about this in the beginning of the article, like you said, working people bled and died and fought tooth and nail for the most basic rights. I mean, my university was founded by John D. Rockefeller. Yeah. He pushed the U.S. National Guard to murder the mine workers at the Ludlow Massacre. He convinced them to set the encampment on fire with women and children. And the mine workers had to arm themselves and fight back just to form a union. And that's the sort of thing that we need to be taught. I think at the level of what can unionists do, what can people in this movement do, honestly, I think that there's been a lot of progress made. I think that in my generation, there's a lot of sympathy for the labor movement, and people who are politically active, it's sort of taken as a given. The same way that people in my generation say, yes, Medicare for all, we all deserve Medicare. People say, yes, labor union, everyone deserves a labor union, even if we don't think about it as much. And I think that the reason that labor unions are not sort of in our consciousness in these political discussions is because the labor movement in America just on a whole is comparatively weak. And so I think that if we want to make the labor movement a bigger part of the conversation, we got to make the labor movement bigger.
I definitely agree with that. And, it is unfortunate that kind of the thing that caught fire first was Medicare for all, free college, a Green New Deal, instead of making the labor movement stronger, because it's kind of putting the cart before the horse, right? Like, you're not going to get these big societal changes that are going to benefit the everyday working people without a mass movement of working people with the power to back up demands with force. And labor unions are they're the strongest tool in the toolbox that working people have to fight for change. And so, I don't know. I always felt that it was unfortunate that the policy changes caught fire before the means to get those policy changes.
Yeah.
Back to the article really quick. This is something that I kind of wanted to underscore because right to work gets so little play. The thing that people immediately think is that right-to-work laws give workers more freedom and more individual freedom and stuff like that, and it reduces government overreach, because it's championed by the people that hate big government, right? It's championed by these people that value liberty ostensibly. But what it does is it is literally the government coming into a contract negotiation between two private entities, the employer and the workers, and saying what you can and cannot have in your contract. I mean, it's astounding just the bald-facedness of the hypocrisy, because it's literally the government saying what you can and can't agree to in a contract, where they would never do this in any. You want to sign away your right to sue your employer? That's fine. You want to sign away your right to protect your privacy? That's fine. That's no big deal. You want to sign away your right to not pay union dues? That's a problem. We don't want to do that. And so it's almost like they are not propelled by a like a genuine interest in protecting individual liberty. It's like they're propelled by an interest in destroying worker power. We're going to talk about that in the next segment. Stay tuned. This is the Valley Labor Report.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time, but the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maple, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtandj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
All workers deserve fair wages, affordable health care, and a retirement plan that enables them to retire with dignity. All workers deserve to have a say about the terms and conditions of their employment, not just the bosses. With the machinist union's over 600,000 members having our back, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama has been serving workers' interests for over 20 years. Our members have the best health insurance in the area with zero deductible plans. We set the bar for pay in the area with over $40 an hour rates, consistently averaging the highest non-college degree jobs in North Alabama with some of the best retirement plans in the industry. We can do the same for you. Together, we remain united, raising our voices to ensure justice on the job and service in the community. The Machinist Union is a true Southern union founded in Atlanta in 1888. We have been serving members' needs for 132 years. The longevity of our union proves our dedication and loyalty to the working class. The Machinist Union isn't just for machinists. We represent workers in government, healthcare, auto workers, aerospace workers, transportation workers, the defense industry, and woodworking. Our members even build the iconic Harley-Davidson motorcycles. If you're ready to get serious about better benefits and wages, if you want to have a voice in your workplace with over 600,000 members to back you up, call or email us today at 256-286-3704 or organize at iamaw44.org.
Here in Huntsville, federal employees are an invaluable part of the nation's defense, offering unmatched expertise in engineering and technology and as stewards of taxpayer dollars. What we ask for in return is to be treated with fairness, dignity, and respect. The American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE Local 1858, is a union of working people looking out for each other, making sure that we're treated right. To inquire about joining or to learn more, call 256-876-4880.
Hey y'all, are you tired of hearing that the South is just a bunch of racist rednecks? Well, tune in to Dixieland of the Proletariat podcast. We talk about Southern working class history and current events through a leftist perspective. Join Nelson, Senior Telecommunications Director Tommy, Comrade Kate, former pig farmer Tyler, and Brother William, wherever you stream your podcast. And good Lord willing and the creek don't rise, we'll see y'all next time. It's Dixieland of the Proletariat, y'all.
WVNN.
Let's go!
All right, folks, welcome back to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host David Story. On the line, we have Daniel Harris. He is the opinions editor at UChicago Gate, which is the University of Chicago's undergraduate political review. We are talking about his article, Right to Work Must Die. And when we left off, I was talking about the hypocrisy of the fact that this policy is championed by people that are saying that this is to decrease government overreach, increase individual freedom, while literally doing the opposite of both of those things. And it is hypocritical in another way, because what this does is encourages free riding, like Daniel mentioned earlier. It encourages free riding by allowing freeloaders in union-represented shops to take advantage of union representation, of the higher wages, the better benefits, the legal team that unions bring to the table without paying dues. So And the same people that are proponents of right to work also constantly rail against undocumented immigrants, ostensibly because they're freeloaders, right? They say that undocumented immigrants don't pay into the welfare system and they take so much welfare and whatever, even though undocumented immigrants pay taxes, support essential industries, et cetera, et cetera. It's doubly hypocritical. And Daniel, you mentioned both of those things in your article. Can you just talk a little bit about why you think that they're able to get away with just such blatant hypocrisy?
Absolutely. And it really is ridiculous. But the argument that they make that somehow you shouldn't be required to pay union dues when the union is going to represent you, when the union is going to deliver higher wages, what they're really saying is we want to do anything we possibly can to keep money from getting in the hands of the organizations that will stand up for working people. And there's nothing to it more than that. That's all that there is. It's just a hatred of worker power and working people. And the Supreme Court has already ruled that the union cannot take dues and use it for political purposes if the workers don't approve of. That's already illegal. And so the idea that paying dues is a violation of your freedom it's really absurd, especially when you consider the fact that in a workplace, if a majority of your workers vote to unionize with a union, you don't get to decide, you don't get to subvert the will of the majority. And so if they want that union, you all have to pay dues. And if you have such a problem with the union that you cannot, in good conscience, pay dues, you are free to go work for Jeff Bezos and work a minimum wage job without health care, without a pension. Meanwhile, all of your coworkers will be enjoying a safer workplace, a higher wage, and better benefits. Mm-hmm. And so the idea that it's about freedom of choice is really ridiculous because your coworkers have already decided, and if you have a problem with that, you don't need to be in that workplace.
Right. And you mentioned that when we in a democracy, when we vote, I did not vote for Donald Trump. I don't get to just not pay taxes anymore because I didn't vote because I didn't vote for the government that represents me. I don't get to just opt out. I don't get to just take my ball and go home. This is we live in a society. You can't just you can't just opt out of society, and you can't just opt out of paying taxes. And it's the same when you are benefiting from a union in your workplace. And like you mentioned in your article, the workers can have the choice of any of the hundreds of labor unions in the country to represent them. They are not bound to have any individual union represent them. And in fact, anytime they can disaffiliate and become an independent union or affiliate with some other union. And I mean, it's amazing. And like you said, unions have been prohibited from using dues on political actions for decades.
Yeah,
for decades.
That's long over.
The only thing that union dues are used for is direct representation.
Yeah, it's
right.
It's very strange to me how, corporations under Citizens United can donate, unlimited amounts of money to political candidates, but
unions can't donate any.
Can't donate a dime.
Not a dime.
Yeah.
It's honestly, it's mind-boggling. Even the people who voluntarily, even under a right-to-work regime, you would think that if I'm voluntarily paying union dues right now. You would think that if I'm voluntarily paying union dues, the union should be able to spend it on whatever they want. They wouldn't have these restrictions. But even under a right-to-work regime, we still have the same restrictions as if we didn't. We still cannot spend union dues on political campaigns, on donating to political candidates, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it is it just boggles my mind.
So I'm going to do what I normally do and smash the Democrats for a minute. And Daniel, I noticed your article was written fairly slanted towards the conservative viewpoint against right to work, and rightfully so. The conservatives have been the main instigators of right to work. But what bothers me, and maybe with you being a history student and being in the political spectrum probably a little bit more than I am, is I think a lot of the labor movement has moved from the left towards the center because of the Democrats' unwillingness to team up with labor any longer. And a perfect example of that is the governor of Virginia, who labor overwhelmingly helped put in office. Within weeks of him getting in there, refused to even address right to work in his state. And I'm baffled. I'm baffled by why I assume I'm assuming it's because there's so much corporate money in politics now, and the Democrats want their share. But what have we got to do to get the party of the worker, what we used to consider the party of the worker, back in our corner?
You know, it's funny that you asked that. I wrote an article before this article, much earlier last year in the winter. The Democratic Party must be a workers' party, and I look back on that article now, and I question my logic, because I'm at this point uncertain that the Democratic Party can be a workers' party. I think that in the introduction to your show, you say it best, that the future of labor will not be decided in Congress. The future of labor will be decided in the union halls. It will be decided on the shop floor. And so when we look at the Democratic Party, we can't think of them as an ally anymore. We have to think of them as less of an adversary than the Republican Party. Yeah. And we can fight them on things, and we can expect them to be a little more sympathetic to the agenda of labor. But at the end of the day, the Democratic Party is loyal to the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is not loyal to the people of the United States. And we look at the history of the Democratic Party, and we see that it was, Bill Clinton signing the neoliberal trade deals. We talk about NAFTA. We talk about permanent normal trade relations with China. These are the trade deals that took millions of jobs. And, George Bush signed them too. And Donald Trump just renewed NAFTA. He called it the USMCA, even though it's the exact same thing, just with Daniel, his signature on it instead.
Hold that thought, and we're going to get to you right on the other side.
Great.
Huntsville's #1 news, talk, and weather station. WVNN Athens. WVNN FM Trinity. A Cumulus station. It's 10 o'clock.
From ABC News, I'm Brian Clark. President Trump says there's nothing wrong with making public appearances. He's planning to speak today to supporters from a balcony at the White House. He'll return to the campaign trail on Monday in Florida for the first time since he was hospitalized with COVID-19.
And I know there's a danger, but I can't be somebody that goes into a basement and just hides in a basement for the rest of my life. I'm running a country.
He was speaking to Fox News Friday as Democratic nominee Joe Biden was asked for his advice to people planning to attend a Trump campaign event after the president's hospitalization.
Good luck. I'd make sure I wouldn't show up unless you had a mask and were distanced.
Former Vice President was campaigning Friday in Las Vegas. The two men will not be debating this week. That's been canceled after President Trump refused the switch to a virtual format. The World Health Organization said Friday saw a new daily record for coronavirus cases, and ABC's Trevor Alt says numbers are climbing here in the U.S.
A new record high in global cases. 350,000 infections reported Friday, and more than half the United States seeing cases climb. The number of hospitalized Americans jumping to 34,000, a spike of 4,300 in 5 days, with 11 states hitting record hospitalizations over the course of the week.
Thousands had to evacuate from areas in Louisiana being targeted by Delta. It made landfall as a Category 2 hurricane. It's now a tropical storm. Sheila Mouton packed her family and dogs into their RV. They decided to ride it out at a rest stop in Chambers County, Texas.
If we'd have been at a campground or something, showing up at midnight, this is easier. I mean, you just pull up and pray they don't kick you out.
Overnight in North Korea, a large military parade marking 75 years since the founding of the ruling party appeared to showcase new missile technology. Videos and photos from the parade now being studied. You're listening to ABC News.
This is a paid advertisement for legal services. Ricky LeBlanc, Chestnut Hill, Mass. Admitted in Massachusetts only. While this firm maintains joint responsibility, most cases of this type are referred to other attorneys for principal responsibility. Attention firefighters, listen closely to the following alert. Certain chemicals in firefighting foams, also known as AFFF, are linked to cancer. Exposure to foam may increase the risk of kidney, pancreatic, testicular, bladder, breast, liver, colon, and prostate cancer, as well as leukemia and lymphoma. Firefighters who use firefighting foam and later develop cancer may be entitled to compensation. Call Sokolov Law now. 1-800-708-7200 for a free legal consultation. Again, that's 1-800-708-7200. 1-800-708-7200. Members Paul J. Morgan, Winter Park, Florida. Nick Niswander, Florence, Kentucky. Rich Graybo, 970 Farmington Avenue, West Hartford, Connecticut. 860-904-7789. Michael Bro Gonzalez, admitted Louisiana. No representation is made that the quality of the legal services to be performed is greater than the quality of legal services performed by other attorneys. I'm a paid non-attorney spokesperson.
Hey y'all, are you tired of hearing that the South is just a bunch of racist rednecks? Well, tune in to Dixieland of the Proletariat podcast. We talk about Southern working class history and current events through a leftist perspective. Join Nelson, Senior Telecommunications Director Tommy, Comrade Kate, former pig farmer Tyler, and Brother William, wherever you stream your podcast. And good Lord willing, the creek don't rise. We'll see y'all next time. It's Dixieland of the Proletariat, y'all.
News Talk 770 AM, 92.5 FM, WVNN.
Stars upon the land, a population burned up, bled dry. The marginalized multiply and unite to fight. You vacant the world, now they're tearing you apart. The soil you held sacred now blackened with.
Folks, welcome back to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host David Story. On the line, we have Daniel Harris. He is the opinions editor for UChicago Gate, which is the University of Chicago's undergraduate political review. We are talking about his article, Right to Work Must Die. And when we left off, David asked him what needed to happen to make the Democrats an ally to working people again. Because, like Daniel was talking about, we can list a litany of anti-worker projects that Democrats have engaged in over the past several decades. Since, I don't know that, I mean, FDR was really the last time that workers had a real friend in a Democratic president, like somebody that they could really count on to be there for them the majority of the time. And so... Daniel, you were, we got cut off by the break, so I'll just let you finish your thought there about what you were talking about before we left off.
Yeah, it's just like you were saying, that the Democrats have been participants in the destruction of organized labor. They have signed the trade deals just going along with the Republicans that have shipped off good union jobs by giving corporations too much leeway. We're not holding the countries that we trade with to a high enough standard to make it a competitive trade deal. They have been very slow to enforce labor legislation and to pass labor legislation. This was a problem with the Obama administration. It's been a problem with recently the PRO Act, protecting the right to organize in Congress. It took way too long for that to pass the House because House leadership did not see it as a priority. That was Democrats who were holding it up. And like you said, Ralph Northam, the governor of Virginia, who is really a coward, has refused to stand up for working people, even though he owes his political career to them. Yep. And even if we look back to FDR, who was certainly a transformational president, he didn't get there on his own. It took pressure and it took bullying from organized labor and workers' movements. And what it really took was the threat of a third party, because the Democratic Party at that time was being outflanked to the left by socialist and other labor parties in the United States. And so what FDR did is he co-opted their agenda. He implemented the New Deal, and that was enough to weaken those parties by showing that the Democratic Party was supposedly a sufficient alternative. And that small amount of co-optation of this socialist workers' agenda made him one of the most wildly popular presidents in American history. And so it really amazes me that the Democrats will refuse to do what's right because they think that it's not politically viable when...
Uh-oh.
Did we lose him?
We lost him.
Oh, no.
All
David...
of the popular, but the Democrats are too to come to the table, which is why...
Yeah, I think we're going.
Hey, can you hear me?
We're going in and out. I think we've got a problem with some internet.
Okay, that may be on my end. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
We can hear you. Sorry about that.
All right. No, absolutely. And I was just going to finish my point, say that if we want the Democrats to be allies to organized labor, it takes bullying and it takes pressure. And we're not going to be able to sit back and watch them get there on their own, because they will not.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's one thing that I always point out, because I being the president of my union, I in Alabama, of course, have an extremely strong right-wing group of members. And, you know, they pay dues. They recognize that we're doing good work, but they vote Republican consistently. And that's something that I constantly point out, is as much as I would like to see them vote more labor-friendly, so long as we hold the politicians that we elect accountable for their actions. And I think that's probably where the drop-off has been for years, is the fact that nobody, I mean, I talk to people all the time at work and say, when's the last time you've called your congressman? Mm-hmm. When's the last time you've even emailed them? We're not on Teams. These folks are our public servants. We should hold them accountable for every action that they take, and on both sides.
Yeah. There's genuinely a lot of hero worship on either side. If you get too into Democratic circles, I mean, even FDR, who's probably my favorite president, there are Democrats who would, upon their reading of it, you would think that it was FDR being a benevolent, class traitor, that that he just did this all on his own, and you wouldn't think that there were people literally being murdered in the streets, fighting for their rights and like demanding that the government do something, and him being pushed to where that was his only option, was to implement the New Deal and to do things for working people. It wasn't like his benevolence; it was that he was forced to do that. And when I'm in Democratic circles, they'll say something about Obama, and I'm like lukewarm at best about it, and they're like surprised at me, and I'm like, what? He was not that great. He was like a moderate Republican, basically.
So, and what you said earlier really it kind of spurs the thought of, is it your opinion that, with you saying that the possibility of a third party under FDR is what pushed him farther to the left, and now we see a big resurgence in DSA, and DSA working really hand in hand? I mean, I can't count the amount of people that's reached out to labor, as far as me, from the DSA. Do you think that has a possibility of pushing the Democrats back farther into the pocket of labor?
That's a good question. I think they've done good work, and I think that the sort of, because they call themselves the Democratic Socialists, they're really more like social democrats, what we see in Europe, and the policies they push, the candidates they get elected, they're doing good work, and I appreciate their organizing model, because they start at the local level. And they obviously they throw their hat into the ring with national races, but they understand that local organizing is more effective. They're picking off seats in city councils, in state senates, and that's important work. I think that the prospect of a successful third party is dim in my opinion. I think that the Democratic Party is just too good at its job of warding off any threats to the left, and I think that we can have two trains running at the same time. We can, on the one hand, pressure the Democratic Party, pull them to the left, have organizations like DSA, which are doing electoral work. But then I think on the other hand, we need mass movements. We need really a popular front of workers who are committed to this sort of mass change in society. And that has to come from the ground up, because, elected officials can do good work. And a lot of these, a lot of the DSA candidates like AOC, Ilhan Omar, they're great candidates, and same in the state senates. What we really need, and they're great elected officials, they've done good work in office. What we really need is for working people to come together and take that power back for themselves.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I love a lot of the work that the DSA is doing. And in fact, the DSA here in North Alabama just bought an ad encouraging people to join, and that's going to be playing beginning next week. We weren't able to get it produced in time to have it run this Saturday, but it'll start playing next week. And they're doing a lot of good stuff here, and they're doing a lot of good stuff down in Birmingham. They're doing brake light clinics, and they've got a free store that they operate down there. So they're doing a lot of and like you said, it's really interesting the way that they're locally driven. They're not, they have national initiatives, obviously, but the majority of the things that each chapter does is determined locally, and I think that's a really good way to do it. Yeah. So Daniel, we really appreciate you coming on.
Yes.
How much time do we have left in this segment, David?
We've got about 3.5
minutes. Daniel, have you got any kind of closing thoughts about what we've been talking about, right to work legislation, the Democratic Party, or anything else about kind of the conservative agenda to like destroy worker power in the country before we let you go?
Yeah, what we've seen over the past few decades, and I say that as if I have been alive, and I have not been alive this whole time, but I can look back and I can look at what's been happening. The Republican Party has succeeded in their attempt to convince working people that it's not their wage and their health care that they should be voting for. It's their opinions on gay people and immigrants and all of these issues that have nothing to do with their life, and that they convince working people that some working people, not all, because I think that working people agree broadly on these issues, but they convince some working people that they should hate other people more than they love themselves, and that they should not vote for better wages, that they should not vote for health care and vote for worker power. And I think that the Democratic Party has fallen into this trap, and the Democratic Party, instead of reminding us what we're fighting for, which is liberating people from their conditions, their material conditions, the Democratic Party has gotten too caught up in these issues that divide people, and they have not actually taken the steps to fight for justice on a lot of these wedge issues. They just performatively say, oh, well, we care more about immigrants, we care more about Black lives, when in reality they don't, and they don't take the necessary steps. And so they allow those issues to be dividing issues rather than taking the necessary steps to solve those problems and then bringing people together around an agenda that all working people can get behind. And I think that unions are the engine of solidarity. And so if we're looking at the possibility of a new politics in this country, it's going to start and end with organized labor. And I really appreciate what you guys do. You're great unionists and organizers, and I appreciate you having me on the show. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, we've really enjoyed it. Daniel, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at @BeatANazi, and that's where you'll find me putting up my articles, and you can follow my opinions there. I'll tweet all of my angry thoughts, and otherwise I'll link all my articles at UChicago Gate. That's the undergraduate political review, and you can see the work of myself and plenty of other brilliant students at the University of Chicago. We're having a lot of important conversations, and we'd love to have you plug in.
All right. Daniel, we really appreciate your time. I
Thanks
really enjoyed
so much. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks
much. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, folks, that was Daniel Harris. He is the opinions editor at the UChicago Gate, which is the University of Chicago's political review. You can find him on Twitter at @BeatANazi. That is at @BeatANazi on Twitter. So make sure you go follow him. And thanks again for coming on, Daniel. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time, but the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maple, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtandj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by listeners like you. If you value the work that we are doing, injecting a different perspective into talk radio, and you have the means, consider signing up for a monthly donation on patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. Again, that's patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report to support our work and keep us on the air. If you're looking for contractors with lower than average EMR and TRIR, if you need to supplement a workforce at any level for any amount of time, if you need iron workers that come trained and certified at no extra cost, or if you need workers from superintendent down to general laborer and you're looking to start work on a project, or you're unhappy with your current contractor situation, you need to call my friend Jeb Miles with the Iron Workers Local 477. They only work with the best in the business, vetted contractors, and can do all kinds of jobs from roofing to steel and bridge erection, from welding to heavy rigging, from structural repairs to machinery alignment, and much more. They supply manpower on 4 of the 5 largest projects in North Alabama, so you know they're legit. If you need good quality, safe, efficient, diligent, and knowledgeable workers on your job, then you need the Iron Workers Local 477. Call Jeb Miles at 256-383-3334. That's 256-383-3334, or via email at local477@bellsouth.net, and make sure you tell them that you heard about them on the Valley Labor Report.
News Talk 770 AM, 92.5 FM, WVNN.
Lonely dead, stuck, bleeding pig. Lonely did shot, choose to dead. Inside.
Folks, good morning and welcome back to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host David Story. We've been talking to Daniel Harris at Beat a Nazi on Twitter about his article for UChicago Gate. Right to work must die. If you missed the interview and you want to go back and watch it later, you can find us on YouTube at the Valley Labor Report. We also streamed it on our Twitter account at Labor Reporters, and you can go back and listen to it as a podcast. You can go to thevalleylaborreport.transistor.fm/subscribe.
Such a great interview.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. That
really,
was a lot of fun.
Really well-spoken and intelligent young man out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. Folks, if you want to call in and talk to us about that, give us a call. 1-866-494-9866 is the number. Again, that is 1-866-494-WVNN. While we're waiting for anybody to call in if they wanted to, there was a story that I saw this week, a working paper that came out that I thought was really interesting. And what it was that, Scott Walker was the governor of Wisconsin for quite a while, and he earned a reputation as one of the most anti-union, anti-worker politicians in the country. I mean, he led a full frontal assault on working people in Wisconsin. And following that, a gender pay gap has arisen where none existed before between teachers, a recent study has found. The researchers that did this study controlled for non-gender related factors like education, experience, performance reviews, etc., and they found that the gap could not be attributed to any of these other factors. After they controlled for these other factors, the pay gap between men and women is now approximately 11%, where it was 0 before among teachers. That is astounding. That is really astounding. And so let's back up just a second and kind of set the stage for how that happened. So when I say that Walker led an assault on workers, what do I mean? He did lots of things, but specifically Act 10 is what the researchers attribute this new gender pay gap to. And what Act 10 is a law that was passed in Wisconsin in 2010 that 1 virtually eliminated collective bargaining rights for public sector employees. They could no longer bargain over hours or anything over base pay. It ended tenure and seniority-based raises, and it mandated recertification annually. That means every year there's a union election for public sector employees.
Wow. That's unheard of.
That is not normal. Every year you've got to vote to recertify the union, and that makes unions there perpetually vulnerable to union busting campaigns. It never ends. And so before Act 10, union contracts covered all teachers. They covered men and women and everybody, with the same experience in education and everything. Obviously they got the same pay and benefits. They were on a schedule. Now teachers are responsible for negotiating their own wages individually. And because of this, a pay gap has arisen. And again, I just want to stress that the pay gap the researchers controlled for all the other relevant factors, education, experience, performance reviews, all of these things, they were controlled for. The only thing that can explain this pay gap was the gender and the reluctance of women to ask for a raise.
Yeah.
And this was an interesting tidbit, though. There was still no pay gap where there were female supervisors. I thought that was interesting.
That is interesting. That's strange that they would have included that in their data, but that's extremely interesting.
I thought that was interesting. I'm not exactly sure what it tells us, but I thought it was interesting to mention. But even though there's been a pay gap, maybe the thing that you're thinking is men are making more than they did before Act 10. You would be wrong. Even the men who are now making 11% more than their exactly the same female colleagues, they have lower salaries than they did before Act 10 passed. In fact, Act 10 purported to usher in a new era of educational excellence and teacher performance.
Yeah. Ain't that the ploy that it's always under?
Yeah. That's and so what actually happened? We can evaluate this now. We can evaluate what it did. It's 10 years after its passage. So what happened? 5 years after its passage, median pay was down by nearly $11,000 annually. $11,000. That is insane, especially knowing the fact that teachers are already underpaid. Teacher turnover rates are nearly double what they were before. The percentage of teachers with less than 5 years experience has increased by nearly 25% in Wisconsin. And so obviously, student educational achievement has decreased.
Yeah.
It has done the opposite of everything that it purported to set out to do.
It would be real interesting to know if they done data on those border counties. As far as on the border of Michigan and other states, to see if the amount of teacher turnover is at, because hey, if I'm within 30 minutes of being able to drive across the state lines and go to work at another school with good collective bargaining, I guarantee you their turnover rate is way higher than that.
They I don't know about specific border counties in Wisconsin, but they did mention the fact that Minnesota has not seen any of these drastic. I mean, these are drastic changes, right? We're talking about in 10 years, teacher turnover rates doubling, the percentage of teachers with less than 5 years experience increasing by a quarter. These are huge. Their pay being down by $11,000. $11,000? That's
that's insane.
That is, when
already underpaid. Already way underpaid.
You're talking about a teacher pay. You're talking about cutting 25 or 20% of their salary, almost certainly. That's or maybe a little bit less than that, but it's that is a big chunk taken out of your paycheck every year. And it would be one thing if all this happened and teachers just had a horrible job, but the students were better educated, but they're not. Student educational achievement has decreased.
Yeah, well, of course, you got younger teachers coming in. Inexperienced teachers, and nothing against the younger teachers. They've got to cut their teeth as well. But at the same time, you need the tenured teachers in there to show them the ropes, to teach them how to teach.
Right. And so what we have learned, if you're like honest, right? If you're honest and you're just objectively looking at the facts and you're using logic, okay? That we like to, Ben Shapiro likes to talk about facts and logic, and facts don't care about your feelings, okay? What we have learned from Act 10 is that, funny enough, reducing pay and benefits and control over the job debilitates worker morale, lowers performance, and hurts the consumers and the community.
Yeah.
Which, like anybody with half a brain could tell you that. And anybody who has been in the workforce, I have said this, I don't even know how many times. Anybody who's been in the workforce knows that management and supervisors get things wrong all the time.
Constant.
And unions allow innovation. They allow workers a place to speak their mind and have control over their workplace and do their job better, especially in these service-oriented fields like healthcare and education. It's not like these people are just, hammering on something, right? These are care-oriented professions that we're talking about right now. And so they want to do, like teachers, nurses, doctors, they want to do their jobs better. And when they have unions, when they have protections in their workplace, they have more freedom to do their job better. They have more control over their workplace. And taking that away obviously hurts them, but it hurts everybody else too.
Yeah. It really speaks to solidarity and collective bargaining and being able to, a rising tide raises all boats. It really speaks to the fact that when you break that down and start requiring people to negotiate independently for their salary, it's cutthroat.
Yeah.
So-and-so is doing this, I should be making more, so-and-so is doing this. It's constant,
Absolutely. It's totally constant, and it's really astounding, like the way that and you mentioned that a rising tide lifts all boats. That is supposed to be the logic of trickle down and tax cuts, and we've seen it over and over and over and over. We've seen it in Kansas, we've seen it in Wisconsin, we've seen it in America. It does not work. Unions work. Unions are the rising tide that does lift all boats, and the same people that are going to try to sell you on this BS trickle-down capitalist corporate economics are going to be the ones that tell you that unions actually hurt workers. Unions hurt their community, and it's a bunch of nonsense. Like, you can't fall for it.
Yeah. You left me speechless. I'm speechless. Yeah. We've only got a few more seconds, but yeah, it's a good point. And I mean, I grew up watching Scott Walker. I remember Scott Walker, and I remember all those teachers going into the Wisconsin state capitol and demanding respect. And hopefully we'll get back to that soon, especially in this state.
Yeah.
Especially in this state.
I hope so. Folks, this is the Valley Labor Report. We will be right back. Give us a call, 1-866-494-9866.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison. This is News Talk 770 AM, 92.5 FM, WVNN. News starts now.
Delta has weakened to a tropical depression as a hurricane. Delta hitting Louisiana hard on Friday, just 6 weeks after areas of the state were decimated by Tropical Storm Laura. ABC senior meteorologist Rob Marciano is in Lake Charles, which has now been walloped by wind and water for the second time.
I've never seen damage like that 6 weeks ago, and I've never seen a storm come this close to landfall in the same spot just, nearly 2 months later. A surreal scene and feeling. It's nauseating to have this happen again to this beautiful community.
Power out to nearly 700,000 customers. The suspects in that alleged plot to kidnap Michigan's governor facing a judge in court. Officials say 2 of the 13 men arrested lived at the rural property they say served as a training facility for the militia group. President Trump is set to host his first in-person event since testing positive for the coronavirus today. He'll speak from the White House South Portico to hundreds of supporters on the White House South Lawn. Dave Packer, ABC News.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years.
providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time, but the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maple, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtandj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms. People across Alabama are hurting. Elected leaders have bailed out corporations while sending only a one-time cash payment to working families despite record unemployment and a public health crisis. Hometown Action is fighting for working people across Alabama to build inclusive and sustainable small town and rural communities. Hometown Action demands that Congress pass a people's bailout that expands health care, sends cash payments to families, and invests in green jobs to restart the economy. Now is the time to act. Learn more at www.hometownaction.org. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by listeners like you. If you value the work that we are doing, injecting a different perspective into talk radio, and you have the means, consider signing up for a monthly donation on patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. Again, that's patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report to support our work and keep us on the air. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time, but the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maple, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtandj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
The Dale Jackson Show, a safe space for terrible people. Weekdays, 7 to 11 a.m., only on WVNN. WVNN.
Folks, welcome back to the Valley Labor Report. It is Saturday, October 10th, 2020. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host, David Story. We appreciate your time today.
The weather's got everybody beat down, man. The weather, I'm surprised after all that great talk the last hour.
We haven't got any callers.
We hadn't got a caller.
Give us a call. 1-866-494-9866. The number is 1-866-494-WVNN. We've been talking about, the guest that we had in the first part of the program was Daniel Harris. He was talking about right to work and the Democrats and the conservative agenda to destroy worker power, and that was really interesting. You can go back and watch that later on our YouTube channel at the Valley Labor Report.
You can check it out on the podcast if you're a podcast listener.
That's right. Check it out on the podcast. And after that, we've been talking about Act 10, and it's the destruction of public sector unions in Wisconsin and how that has affected teacher pay, teacher morale, and student educational achievement. And in fact, talking about the destruction of public sector unions, the total union density in Wisconsin has decreased by 31%.
Yeah, that's not surprising.
By 31% since 2010.
Did Wisconsin pick up any of that off of the West Virginia, Colorado teacher strikes or anything like that? I don't recall seeing Wisconsin doing anything.
Yeah, I don't recall anything like that.
And that kind of speaks to that Act 10 as well, because that would break down the ability to organize effectively.
Yeah. I imagine that the situation in West Virginia is similar to the situation in Wisconsin now, but it's like but it's like it was newer for Wisconsin teachers, and so maybe that's why they're
took a little while to
whereas with teachers in West Virginia that's like the status quo, and so they were used to organizing under those pressures, and maybe they weren't in Wisconsin. Maybe that was it. But So the reason that I did all this reading about like public sector unions and Act 10 in Wisconsin and all that is because of that study that found that there was no gender pay gap among teachers in Wisconsin prior to when you account for like other relevant factors like education and experience and all of these things and time spent in the workforce and there was no gender pay gap.
Yeah,
in
well,
Wisconsin.
I mean, just the amount of money alone that was lost. I mean, you're talking about that's an insane.
I know.
I can't imagine taking that kind of cut.
Yeah, it's crazy. And now there is a nearly 11% difference between the pay that a similarly situated male teacher gets to a similarly situated female teacher, and that kind of and both of them are worse off than they were before, and that really, in my mind, kind of underscores the fact that like women's issues are workers' issues.
Yeah.
Minority issues are workers' issues. Like we talked to Jake Grumbach, University of Washington researcher, a couple of months ago now, I guess it was, about the effect that union membership has on racism in the workplace and the effect that it has on racial pay gaps. Yeah. And, that's what, like, unions and the labor movement are at the center of, they have to be at the center of equality and any movement for such a goal, because otherwise it's going to be ineffective.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing that I'm so proud to be able to walk through my workplace with, I would say we probably have 15, 20% female workers out there, and to know that every one of them make the exact same thing that their counterpart sitting next to them does. I mean, it's really uplifting.
Yes.
I don't know. It's the best system that could be in place right now.
And why the heck shouldn't you have a say over your workplace? I mean, that's like so, people in America are so like beat down with this capitalist ideology that you're supposed to, when you clock in.
Should be great. I mean, that's what you hear constantly in this state. Just be grateful you have a job.
Right.
Seriously?
Yeah, be grateful that you have a job and just accept the fact that when you clock in, you become a subject and not a citizen.
Not just when you clock in. This is something that we've been dealing with a lot here lately. When you're off hours, when you're not at work, the companies are still attacking you. Look at social media posts and things like that. They will discipline and terminate you for off the work social media posts. I mean, it's not, they own you.
Yeah.
As simple as that.
Yeah. And, it's real, like, when you talk about this, this freedom-loving, liberty-loving, I hate the government energy that so many people have, like, I can get on board with that, man. Like, screw the government, give me my liberty, give me my guns, like this. Folks, like, look, I'll let you in on a secret here. If you go left far enough, you get your guns back, okay? You get your guns back, all right? You just got to go left far enough. You got to get past them libs, okay? Got to get past the libs, and you get your guns back. Yeah. But, I'm, like, all about that. But the folks that have that energy towards the government, they completely lose it when it comes to the boss. Like,
Well, not just the boss. I mean, those same people are bootlickers all the way around. I mean, look, let's get for real. I beat up on the Democrats constantly on this show. But rightfully so, I beat up on the Democrats constantly.
Absolutely.
But we've got, I was talking to one of the guys at work a few weeks ago about us having Doug Jones on and how I was going to rail. I mean, I'm probably the most antagonistic towards Jones of most people in the labor movement. And, he was just eating it up. Oh, yeah, this, that, and the other. And he's like, so are you going to say something about Trump? And I'm like, heck no. What do I care about Trump? And he was just taken back because he automatically thought he must be a Republican because he's going to beat up on Jones. No, brother. I'm not a bootlicker. I hold both parties to a higher standard. And that's where we've got to get with these people, man. It's this whole team mentality. This Auburn versus Alabama crap is killing us.
I know. It is. Yeah, it's crazy. Like just because you vote for somebody, like that is the that is the end of my political alliance with like any politician. Like I'm going to vote for them and I'm going to fight for them to do things that benefit working people in Alabama. And like past that, I mean, you know, like I don't care what the that's like I don't care. I'll call them out on whatever. I have actually published an open letter in AL.com criticizing Doug Jones for voting for the banking deregulation. Yeah. I was interviewed by The Intercept for that when I was in the College Democrat. This was when I was still in electoral politics. I was a member.
When you truly believed in it.
Yeah. I was in leadership of the Alabama College Democrats, and I was publishing. Like I was publishing criticisms of the only statewide elected Democrat in the state. Wow.
As you should.
As you should.
As you should.
Absolutely should. Look, folks, if you are even if you're in the Democratic Party, if you're in the leadership of the Alabama College Democrats, or you're on the State Democratic Executive Committee, if you can't, like, utter a criticism of people just because they have a D next to their name, you are not a friend of the working people of Alabama. If you cannot utter a criticism of somebody because they have an R next to their name because you voted for Trump in November, you are not a friend of the working people of Alabama.
Yeah, it's got to stop.
It's got to stop. You've got to be able to criticize people on both sides of the aisle because, like, most of them don't care about you. You've got to look out for yourself. You got to look out for your brothers and sisters because they're not going to do it for you.
Yeah. That whole idea that you just elect somebody and walk away for 4 years it's over. It's way past over. And yeah, I mean, we got some calls the other week about, you know, us being a liberal talk show. And I'm like, man, you have no idea what you're talking. Apparently you don't listen to this show.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's like you got to be able to, like, call a spade a spade. And, you know, there's so many folks that are just like, they're totally unwilling to say anything negative about their own side. And it's pretty... You know, it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
It really is.
There should not be any sides.
No.
I mean, truthfully, there should not be any sides. Mm-hmm. I would love to see us get away from these corporate parties that have divided us for so long, and just everybody run independently, and you run on your own merit, and you're held to what you run on. But that no longer happens anymore.
No. Yeah, it's and then in Alabama we've got straight ticket voting. Like we're one of the only. Can you believe there are people? Apparently, 70% of the people who voted in Alabama in 2018 just bubbled in the line. Just bubbled in the GOP or the Democrat box. Like, why would you do that? Oh, man. Like, I can't believe that there are actually people that go in and they just bubble next to the GOP line and they just, like, and they say, yeah, that's it. Whoever the GOP wants to put in office, that's who I want to put in office. Whoever the Democrats want to put in office, like, no other explanation needed. I mean, like, man, you gotta do more than that. We got a caller on the line.
We got Steve on the line. Welcome in, Steve. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing fine. You guys need to learn about an adage called beating a dead horse, okay? Do you understand that union membership has been on the decline in the southeast United States for years? Years. If you look around in Mississippi, Tennessee, Alabama, that all the car manufacturers have voted down union, and you're beating the dead horse. Union, this whole idea about organized labor and unions and all that crap is dead. It's going down.
I don't disagree with you. It has been on a decline. It's been on a decline because people, because our own working folks have voted
because it's
consistently.
Unnecessary.
It's unnecessary.
It's unnecessary.
It's unnecessary.
It's unnecessary. Well, I'll tell you what. You enjoy your weekend that was won by people fighting and dying in the streets.
Okay, panty waist. Okay, panty waist. Enough. That happened 50 years ago.
50 years is not that long. 50 years is not that
What?
long. 50 years is not that long, and it won't take 50 years to lose it. I promise you. You get rid of unions?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they've already put in regulations to cut overtime for workers.
We've been talking about Act 10 the second half of the program. We've been talking about Act 10 in Wisconsin and how only 10 years after its passage, median pay for teachers in Wisconsin is down $11,000. You don't think that the same thing, you don't think that those politicians, those bosses, those corporate oligarchs are after your pay?
Public sector union.
What? We'll bring you in on the other side of the break. Stay tuned. This is the Valley Labor Report.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time, but the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maple, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtandj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by listeners like you. If you value the work that we are doing, injecting a different perspective into talk radio, and you have the means, consider signing up for a monthly donation on patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. Again, that's patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report to support our work and keep us on the air. People across Alabama are hurting. Elected leaders have bailed out corporations while sending only a one-time cash payment to working families despite record unemployment and a public health crisis. Hometown Action is fighting for working people across Alabama to build inclusive and sustainable small town and rural communities. Hometown Action demands that Congress pass a people's bailout that expands health care, sends cash payments to families, and invests in green jobs to restart the economy. Now is the time to act. Learn more at www.hometownaction.org. The American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE Local 1858, believes all workers are entitled to fairness, dignity, and respect. AFGE also knows that the best way to guarantee proper treatment is for workers to stand together, united, looking out for each other. In AFGE, we fight for workers every day to ensure a workplace that is safe and free from harassment. If you're a federal employee and want to be a part of this union, to protect yourself and your fellow workers, call 256-876-4880. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time, but the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maple, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtandj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
WVNN. Depend on it.
Folks, good morning and welcome back to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host David Story. On the line, I believe we still have Steve. Steve was telling us that unions are unnecessary because now he has the weekend and he doesn't feel like he deserves any more. And I just got through telling him how we were talking about Act 10 and how only 10 years after its passage, median pay was down by more than $11,000 for teachers. And then he mentioned something about the private sector, and here's what I will say about the private sector. Since union membership started declining in the 60s, median pay for workers has stagnated while productivity has skyrocketed. CEO to worker ratio pay has increased from 25 to 1 to 320 to 1. Who is doing the producing? Who is making that productivity rise? It's the workers. And the CEOs are now making more than 300 times what their workers are making on average, and it just so happens to coincide with the decimation of union membership and the labor movement in America, in concert with the agenda by corporate oligarchs and politicians in the Democratic and the Republican party's assault on labor. And so now, Steve, after that, I'll let you tell me why unions are unnecessary.
I guess Steve didn't want to hang out during the break.
Oh, did he not?
Looks that way.
That's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate. It's
That's
unfortunate that people can't come on here.
Yeah,
here's the thing, what you get away with on every other station. You can come on, you can make some asinine statement, and then walk away from it because facts don't matter.
Yeah.
Facts don't matter.
And you talk about private sector union membership. My good brother Jeb Miles with the iron workers, he said right now in North Alabama, union iron workers make a package of over $44 an hour. Non-union iron workers make $20 an hour or less.
Yeah.
That's in the private sector.
The fact is, we are making. I'm making about when you take inflation into the aspect, I'm making about the same thing my father made 30 years ago. We are not, and there's a reason why everyone's in debt up to their eyeballs. Nobody's got a $500 in their savings account. They're barely scraping by. Social Security is constantly under attack. Pensions have been under attack. They are doing everything they can to make you subservient and work for the rest of your life. And you're going to sit here and say unions aren't necessary. I can tell you, if you walk out anywhere in public, and most people are literally weeks away from bankruptcy if they were to lose their job today. And unions aren't necessary anymore. Well, I mean, it's this bootlicking mentality.
It's crazy. It's like, and like, why do workers not deserve the fruits of their labor?
Why do workers not deserve to get a fair contract?
Why do workers not deserve to have control over their workplace? Why should workers have to check in or have to live their entire lives under the surveillance and the eye of their boss and like live at their beck and call? Like, that's absurd. It's absurd. And the only way, and like Steve mentioned this, and it's true, unions have been on the decline since the 60s, since the 70s, since there's been a concerted assault on organized labor, since there's been a concerted assault on working people by corporate oligarchs and politicians in both parties. And but so that is true. But that's why we're on the radio right now.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing.
Because we want to change that, because the only way to make our lives better, the only way to reverse the trend of CEOs stealing our labor from us, the only way to take back our time, the only way to get a fair cut of the things that we're producing is to organize.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Answer me honestly. If you're out there driving in your car right now, the car that you signed a contract for, the car that you're making payments on, or if you're sitting in your house today, the house that you signed a contract for, the house that you're making payments on, who in their right mind would go to a bank and say, we don't need a contract. I'll let you change the interest rate anytime you want. I'll let you raise the payments anytime. There's really no reason because, hey, I can come back in and renegotiate as often as I want, right? Who do you think's going to renegotiate? You know, this idea that you can just go into your boss independently and get you a raise every year is insanity. Get a contract. Who the most important thing you're going to ever do in your life is work. Yeah. And you should have a contract stating what those working conditions are. You sign a contract for your car, and it holds both parties accountable. You sign a contract for your house, but yet you don't think you need a contract for work to hold both parties accountable? Yeah, I know. It's insane.
It's insane. David, have you got your ad read for Punta Cana restaurant? We've got somebody calling in, but we've not got time. We've got like 2 minutes left. Have you got your ad read for Punta Cana?
No, I don't have it.
Okay. Well, maybe
we'll get it next week.
Yeah. Okay. Well, somebody's calling in, so maybe see if they want to say something in the last 2 minutes. Maybe we can give them the last word. We'll see. But like he said, it's like you would never agree to just, oh yeah, Mr. Banker, whatever you want to do, that's totally fine with me. I have no objections to that.
Oh, we still got
that is no problem at all. Like I'm just at your beck and call. Like you would never do that. Why would you do that with your boss? You wouldn't. You shouldn't. You shouldn't accept it. You absolutely shouldn't. Man, we've got 2 more callers on the line. Y'all got to call in earlier.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Who are you talking to?
Yep, that's you.
Is this Steve?
All right. Just got a comment on that other caller. He thinks like I used to think. I'm a Republican. You turned me off with the Democrat talk to start with. I'll just say that much. But how does somebody start to get a union in their company if it's not there?
Do you follow us on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter or anything?
No, it's the first I've heard of you.
Okay. Look us up on Facebook at the Valley Labor Report, or it's actually on Facebook, it's Valley Labor Report. Send us a message, and we can definitely help you with that.
Yeah, we'll help you with that. And also, if you look us up on YouTube, we've had a couple of interviews talking about how you would actually go about forming a union. You can look up our interview with Daniel Gross. He's the author of Labor Law for the Rank and Filer. And you can look up our interview with Maxim Baru. He is the organizing department chair for the Industrial Workers of the World, which is an international labor union. You can look up those interviews, but also look us up on Facebook or Twitter at Valley Labor Report and send us a DM, and we will get you. We'll chat with you and help you to learn a little bit more about that. And like he mentioned, he's a Republican. I don't care. I don't care that he's a Republican. It does not.
I've got tons of Republicans that I'm in the union with.
Doesn't matter at all to us.
I guarantee I'm not a Democrat.
We want to organize. Yeah. We want to organize.
Hey, we appreciate you calling, brother. I'm going to go ahead and drop the mic, but definitely hit us up.
Yeah. Folks, this has been the Valley Labor Report, and we will see you next week.
WV